Welcome back to Iron Sports. Joining us now is the chairman of SVREL, Mr. Michael Bernard. Mr. Bernard, sir, good evening and welcome to Iron Sports.
Good evening to you, Spencer, to you and your viewers.
First of all, Mr. Bernard, what's the promoting company's take on what transpired on Saturday? Persons are still talking about what happened before the Diamond Mile, during and after the Diamond Mile, but more so what happened before the unfortunate scratch of Shiza Maniter, what happened at the gate where procedures followed. Could that have been averted? What's the position of SVREL?
It was a case of misfortune, I would say, an event that certainly one would not have wanted to happen. But if you know horses, Spencer, they are very fickle. And what we had happening was that a horse that was actually in the gate beside, I believe, Shiza Manita, acted up. And I understand turned over in the gate. When that happened, it then caused Shiza Manita to get fractures, if you will, and she bolted through the front of the gate, and we saw exactly what happened thereafter. Thankfully, she was not injured, and the latest report I've heard is that the trainer did actually gallop her yesterday 4 furlongs, and I think it was 48. So we are happy to note that the horse is fine, but unfortunately, on the day that incident happened, our investigation that suggests it has nothing to do with any lack of following procedures or any negligence on the part of the handlers. It was just a very simple error, not error actually, but what I would say is behavior of horses. And I mean, I own quite a number of horses, and these things have happened from time to time, not just here, but internationally. Unfortunate though it may be, it put a damper on the day, but nevertheless, we are happy that the horse is fine, and that's most important.
Yes, because some persons may be wondering that given what happened with Perfect Asset and the unfortunate Vasinagier scenario, if procedures at the starting gates need to be looked at, or whether there are any plans from the promoting company's perspective, to have upgrading or refresher courses for that crew.
We saw nothing, and we know of nothing that really suggested that that was the case. In fact, there was a jockey who was actually riding the horse that acted up, who explained, I think, quite well what happened on the day. And as far as we are concerned, there is nothing about what happened that we would say is as a result of not following procedures or negligence on the part of handlers. These things happen, and it's just one of those unfortunate situations that we would prefer not to have happened.
Mm-hmm. The Diamond Mile itself now, Mr. Bernard, the richest purse in the English-speaking Caribbean. We are hearing, in fact, we heard from Mr. Metcalf, the chairman of the BGLC, that there is a date change for next year. It will be brought forward. What sort of discussions have you had with the BGLC in terms of the changes coming for the Diamond Mile next year? We're also hearing that it will be by invitation as opposed to year-to-date earnings.
Preliminary discussions have taken place. We have had a number of feedback from a number of stakeholders in relation to how they would like to see the Diamond Mile organized, structured, and how horses are allowed to enter. Certainly it is something that we welcome in terms of a discussion. The issue of the change of date for the race is to facilitate horses coming to Jamaica to participate in the race, and also being able to participate in the Caribbean Classics. So in essence, all of us will welcome a change to the way horses are allowed to enter the Diamond Mile, whether it be by invitation, but certainly what we want is to have the best set of horses in Jamaica and the Caribbean, if you will, participating in the race. And whatever we do needs to allow for that to happen.
When you talk to some of the top trainers, they say we do not have enough Grade 1 horses in the country. So if it goes to by invitation only, it means there could be a challenge there. And also, as opposed to being by year-to-date earnings, some of the top trainers say if it's by invitation, it means some trainers who have a stronger string of horses would not be forced to race some of these horses as often as possible if it was being done on year-to-date earnings. How would that, for example, affect the standard or quality of the racing if we're not seeing some of the top Grade 1 horses or top overall horses in action?
The thinking is that if it's by invitation, the best horses will be invited. Now, I believe, and this is a personal view, that there must be some objectivity to the process, right, which will allow for a greater level of transparency and less dispute in relation to the horses that are invited, so to speak. This year, what we had was an objective process whereby it was based on earnings in overnight and up classes of races, right? Um, Next year, I'm not sure exactly how and what the criteria will be, but a process that includes stakeholders, trainers, the BGLC, I would think maybe JRC, yeah, and other stakeholder groups will inform the process. And that's really what we want. We want something that's transparent, but at the same time, one that allows for the very best horses to participate in the race. And best is a relative term, right? So whilst we say best, there must be some criteria. There is a thinking, for example, that we should give points for certain races. So we designate a number of races, and horses that enter those races earn points. I think something like how I believe whether it be the Kentucky Derby or the Breeders' Cup is done. And so what we know for sure is that the outcome that we expect is to have the very best horses in Jamaica and the Caribbean participating.
Right, nice way to segue into in terms of the innovations which could make this, which is supposed to be, or which is the biggest day on the local racing calendar and in the Caribbean, really live up to that standard. In getting overseas horses, persons are saying 4 years now, 4 stagings. What is that could be done, or from a promotional perspective, how could the promoting company help in that regard? Or even go back to years ago when we had the Super Stakes jockeys from the Caribbean and elsewhere coming for some innovation or innovative initiatives on the day itself.
All right, 2 things. We can speak to jockeys and we can speak to horses. The actual day of the week that we have the race will determine whether we can get jockeys such as Javier Castellano or Frankie Dettori here. So a Monday, for example, or even a Tuesday would be a good day in order to be able to attract those jockeys because they don't have competing engagements in the overseas markets. In terms of horses, the value of the purse, right now it's maybe close to, it's about 100,000 US. As to how attractive that is to get a horse to come from the United States to Jamaica to run in that race and then return, that is questionable in my view, certainly. I've had to look at decisions like that. If I was to bring a horse from the United States here, I'd bring it for the race and I would not have it return. I'd keep it here. You bring in a horse from Trinidad and Tobago or Barbados, the issue of the economic feasibility of something like that. You're going to be importing, you're going to bring in the horse in, you have the airfare and all of that. If that is to be handled by the owner, then it's going to be a challenge. Now, people in horse racing, really, we are primarily into really for the love of the sport. So there may not be that much focus on the cost, but nevertheless, people want to cover the costs, cover the expenses. So to get a horse from overseas here, it has to make economic sense along with the, the pomp and the pageantry
Yes.
and the value of the trophy and so forth.
Thank you very much, sir. Quite sure we'll speak again, all being well. That's Mr. Michael Bernard, the chairman of the promoting company for local horse racing, Supreme Ventures Racing and Entertainment Limited. You're watching Ion Sports, and the discussions continue. We're sticking with the sport of kings, horse racing.